To make sure that's all good. Okay, cool. All right. Well, let's get started. Let me pull my notes here. Okay. Welcome back to another episode of InterviewAt. Although this week we are doing something different, and this is hopefully a new series of videos that I'm hoping to do, which is introducing folks to, well, practitioners, right? Executive-led job advancement, where you can really see how the people at the top of their game do it by answering the silly questions that I like to ask people in their mock interviews. All right, and just for a little bit of an intro on Michael, he is a former VP of product at Fandom, former VP of product at Major League Baseball, where he had purview for all of the data products. And I gotta be honest with you, I really want to understand how they figure out the spin rate of the ball and all the other stuff, but that's something for another time. And prior to that, you were definitely plucked from obscurity from a genius level manager at Amazon who wanted you to run the iOS team for Kindle. I don't know who that person is, but definitely the smartest person on the planet. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. I tell jokes. Mike worked for me for a little bit. Very talented product manager. Happy to have you on board. I really appreciate you jumping on to do this with me today. Is that a good summary of your current work stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brandon. Good to be with you.
Awesome. Well, all right. You know the drill. I'm going to ask you a question. The only thing I gave you ahead of time was I allowed you to pick your leadership principle, which is fine. You chose invent and simplify, which is great. That's a very, very good one for product managers. I think in general, as you know, remember when I ran the processes for hiring, when running a good process based on role and level, you try to target 6 leadership principles, and invent and simplify is certainly one of them that I would focus on for a product manager. It is in that bucket. So today's question for you is going to be, what is the most impactful out-of-the-box solution you have ever devised?
What is the most eventful solution out of the box?
Impactful, not eventful, impactful.
Okay, what is the most impactful solution that I've devised out of the box?
Yep.
Great question. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a situation. The situation that I was in at Major League Baseball, I was running MLB TV. MLB TV is a subscription product where out-of-market folks like yourself from LA, you could watch the Dodgers in Colorado if you chose to, and you would subscribe to that product. As we know, there are a lot of ways to consume baseball these days. Not only are there the regional sports networks and the linear TV options that you have, but you've also got games on YouTube, you've got games on Facebook, you've got games even on Twitter. So there's a variety of ways to get baseball. From the league perspective, we were looking for differentiators in our owned and operated MLB TV products. So we started to look for use cases that would move the needle in terms of our own fans and their engagement and enjoyment of the product. So one of the things about inventing and simplifying is taking ideas from everywhere. And in this particular situation, we were brainstorming, and one of the designers on my team came up with what I thought was a really great idea. He said, I'm a big Giants fan, and I usually can't start watching games until later. I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm doing. He was a cyclist, spending a lot of time on the hills with his bike.
Damn those cyclists. That goes crazy right? A lot.
How do I get started with my cyclists? That's another story. But anyway, he kind of walked through this use case where he comes into a game late and he doesn't know what's happened. He can see the score and let's say it's 4-0 Giants over Rockies. How did we get here? How did this happen? And to go and recreate the narrative, what you have to do is go out to an application like at Bat or ESPN or something else on the internet and see what scoring plays happened to get you to this juncture. And his suggestion was, wouldn't it be great if we could catch up on all of those meaningful plays before you join the live point within the telecast?
So like a pseudo real-time recap?
Exactly. That's okay. Exactly what it was. So that was the situation we were in, is trying to find this, trying to find something that differentiated. He had a great idea. Sometimes you'll have a hypothesis and then you'll go and look for some data to support it. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. So we said, okay, let's
hold on. Before you jump into that, I'm curious. So you had a designer come in, and that's great, listening to your team and bubbling up solutions. But why did you, collectively as a team, decide that this was important to do?
Yeah, well, there were a couple of different hypotheses that we had. We had a short list, and we just kind of started to go through that short list to see, okay, is there any data that suggests that any of these potential applications could move the needle for our users? So it was come up with the ideas, let's go look at the data and see what it tells us. And that's exactly what we did for a handful of ideas. And this one in particular, what we did is we looked at cohorts of baseball watchers, and we said, okay, of the people who are watching these games, at about what point do they join the live stream? And what we found was a large percentage of these fans were joining streams after the sixth inning. So there's a huge percentage of folks who are joining late. So there's some data to suggest that perhaps this is a problem that we need to solve for customers. So we started to put more energy into this idea based on that data. And what we did was we developed a very HTML light prototype to put in front of potential customers. And we had the resources to have people in from the San Francisco Bay Area to take a look at some clickable wireframes and get their perspective on things. And a lot of times what happens when you're building these features and you're inventing and simplifying is that you start to notice trends in what people are saying and how they're using these interactive prototypes. And we heard the same signal kind of over and over, which was, oh, this is a great feature. Oh, this is a problem that I have in my consumption of baseball content. And we took those learnings and we put them into a video. And essentially that became the backbone for putting together an investment case for this feature internally.
So just out of curiosity, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
I mean, if you think about there's some random intern who works at ESPN who's got to create the highlight package for whatever game, right? And that's their job. So does this essentially automate that? I mean, I guess, am I understanding what the kind of end product would be? Is you're basically automating the highlight package, but doing so in a way that I guess is, helping tell the narrative, as you're using your words, telling the narrative of the game has occurred?
That is exactly right. So okay. You have a couple of problems there. And this is where we had to go through and you start to solution with your team and get great ideas from some of the folks that you work with. And there were a couple of challenges. So in good Amazon fashion, we had some tenets. One of the tenets was all of this has to happen in 90 seconds. And it has to
When you say, what does that mean? All of this has to happen in 90 seconds? The recap?
The recap has to happen in 90 seconds.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Because we wanted to make it short enough to where it wasn't going to be a distraction.
It's a commercial break.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's prescient what you said, because the initial approach that we had was, oh, we'll just go and grab whatever highlights we have packaged that somebody in New York had put together and put all of the bumpers around. And we quickly found out that there were some challenges to this because highlights don't get federated out as quickly as one might think. There's a process that goes into it. So customers could potentially miss out on important highlights. That's one of the problems. Another problem was because you have somebody who is manually choosing which plays to do and how to do them, you don't get all of the plays that may have added to that narrative. People are very, kind of point and click selective on the internet, and they just want to see one or two maybe. And we needed the ability to have all of the important plays to that narrative. So one of the things that we did is we spoke with our StatCast team internally, who's a group of brilliant folks who build the API that fuels all of the apps at baseball. And we told them their problem. They said, oh, gee, that's really interesting. We've been thinking about this idea called a captivating index, which was essentially stack ranking the plays according to their impact on the game. And they just put it in the API. Already there, we were like, great, okay, that's something that we can at least identify the plays. And then another engineer on the streaming side had the brilliant idea that when you're doing a live stream, you have the entire stream and you can jump to different time points within that stream.
Yep.
So all of a sudden we had this technical solution because you could identify every single play. You could determine how long each was, how many could fit into 90 seconds, and then you just jump to different time codes on that stream as the customer progresses through this catch-up option. So that was a big revelation for us. And those were some areas where we didn't necessarily have solutions and worked through those together as a team.
I'm sorry, did you say that, so that it's not just, it wouldn't just create like a 90-second video that they could scrub through. It was literally a play-by-play where they could click through with like video heads to jump ahead if they didn't want to see it. Oh, that's clever.
Exactly. Okay. And before every play, we would
watch a lot of baseball.
Right. Exactly. Before every play, there's a card that says, here's what's going to happen. Here's the player involved. Here's the play. You have the option to skip it. That also gave us a great opportunity to work with our revenue team. And we actually sold this as a sponsorship opportunity. So we launched this with the US Marine Corps when the feature launched, and they were able to, support this thing that was brand new that nobody had ever seen. And ultimately, through these actions of the team, of me as the head of product there, we were able to develop a feature that had instant traction. It had a high level of use almost immediately.
Well, I have questions about the ad part of it and the call to action and whatnot, but I'm more curious specifically about so you build this thing, what does success ultimately look like? How are you measuring success of the product?
Great question. So the ways that we were thinking about success were kind of threefold. One was we wanted to see adoption of the feature. Are people using it? Because it would pop up for users as soon as they entered a stream. So you have everybody getting this call to action. Huge percentage of them decided that's what they wanted to do. That's one measure. Second measure was we wanted to look at cohorts that used the feature and see if they used and watched more baseball. Mm-hmm. The third measure was whether or not we could get it sponsored out the gate. From my perspective, I had come in as a new manager. One of the important things for me was to earn my keep with each feature that we built. Everything had to be, to an extent, self-sustaining. It had to have a revenue story associated with it. And that was the revenue story for this. And we had a really excellent sponsorship group at baseball, talked to a lot of different potential customers, and we're able to kind of sell the vision to the US Marine Corps and then Wendy's. And it ended up being a really great product and really showed what the team from end to end stakeholders throughout the organization were able to accomplish together.
So how did it perform? Let's take that second metric where you hadn't cohorted out and you wanted to see if they were watching more baseball. How did the cohorts perform against your expectations that you started with?
Great question. So when we looked at those cohorts, we saw increased baseball watching activity. It wasn't drastic or dramatic, but there was a change.
Can you define that a little bit better than increased?
Well, I can't get into for proprietary.
Okay, fair. Totally understand.
Yeah, the league might send a cease and desist to me. So
no, that's fine. Understood.
Yeah, but it was, it wasn't, it wasn't a step change. I can say that much.
But so I'm thinking about the feature, right? And I'm going to challenge you a little bit here. Is that, like, I understand that as a feature and running the team, you want people to consume more. I get that. But with hindsight and kind of looking back on that, is that really the right metric to use?
That's
hold on. Well, let me ask because I'm making an assumption here. When you say watched more baseball, please define that first. Because I think I don't want to color it with my own assumption. I want to make sure I understand what you mean by that.
Yeah. Really good question, insightful. For us, watching more baseball meant watching more baseball on owned and operated interfaces.
MLB, yeah.
Engagement with our owned and operated applications.
But is that like number of instances where they open the app or total minutes watched? Like how are you measuring that?
Games watched. Then time watched during games.
Okay. Because my gut is telling me as a product guy, right? This is where you have the unfortunate run-in where you got a guy as a product guy, right? But my gut is telling me that while games watched matters, that is a sequential element over the course of a season. So hard to know unless you've got a return customer. But really what you want to know is, are they returning consistently? Or are they missing less games, right? What is the duration between when they log in as measured by games missed, right? And are they coming back because they feel like they can get back into it whenever versus just missing entire games and be like, meh, I missed it, no big deal, right? But I don't know that I have a clear metric about how to measure that. But I'm just curious, like, did you guys reevaluate this over time, or did you just leave it at those metrics?
Yeah, we continually reevaluated it. There's, like you say, there's a lot of moving parts there, right?
Yeah.
Because, if you look at time watched, you could get really aberrant behavior because you could have a 14 inning game where somebody watches from the 6th inning to the 14th inning. It looks like they watched 8 innings, whereas they, in a regular 9 inning game, maybe they watched 3 innings. So the total time watched wasn't the greatest measure. It was really, are they watching more whole number, full integer games over the course of the season?
So normally I'd ask a different question, but I'm curious since you introduced the element of the sponsorship. The way you described it, it sounds like a full-on branding. There was no clear call to action, right? Because the person wants to watch the game, so taking them away from it doesn't make any sense. So how did you sell this to them as your primary sponsor, the Marine Corps, to start? What was the sell there for them?
Absolutely. So branding is really important to, big organizations like the Marine Corps. And in this case, there's a lot of other packages that are being developed by the sponsorship team.
Yep.
And these are what you would, in the biz, you call a kicker, where they're looking for something that's a little bit different, that's novel, that has some ability to show innovation. We're Marine Corps and we want to be associated with baseball. We want to be associated with innovation. So this was really
nothing says Marine Corps like baseball.
Well, when you think about the audience
overlap, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Although the younger,
now the armed forces, I get that the armed forces sponsor a lot of sports, and I get it. I understand. I always, as a kid, I was always like, go Army on a dragster, but yeah, it does make sense.
Totally. And they have pretty big budgets, right? And that helps.
Understood. Okay. It's a great answer. I mean, overall, fantastic. Obviously, I'll add my own elements when I do the recap of this, which you won't see until I post it. But that was a great answer. Again, it highlights the difference between, someone who's been in the arena at the highest levels who continues to perform, being able to provide this as a lens to other folks is just, I think, hugely valuable. So I appreciate you taking the time. But now the second question for you, which is as someone who's running teams, large teams, many different companies, what is your favorite interview question to ask and why?
Yeah, I like to dig right into a candidate's what makes them tick in terms of the products they use. What's your favorite product and why is it your favorite product? A lot of times I'd say almost 8 out of 10 times I get Spotify. And that's cool. Spotify is a great product, but why is it a great product? And I think that's where I see a lot of people kind of stumble. They're like, oh, well, you got all this music and it's cool. And, I love music and that's great. But a lot of products do that. Why is Spotify 10x better than Pandora? Why is it better than everything else that existed? And you can learn a ton about people that way. And I really like it when people think outside of the box. And instead of a digital product, they come at me with Roomba or my Dyson vacuum or some food product. And that really blows my mind. That's where I'm like, okay, this person understands products from 360 degrees. They understand, the panacea versus being very narrowly focused in digital.
Yep. So two fun facts there. One, don't make the mistake I made and buy your wife a Roomba for a birthday present and be like, but it's a robot. Yeah, no, they don't like getting vacuum cleaners as birthday. I think it was a Christmas gift, but that was okay. I learned a lesson. But two, I would give you a freebie to augment that question because I oftentimes would ask, walk me through do you have an iPhone or an Android? Walk me through your favorite app. But throw out all the obvious ones like mail or whatever. Just walk me through your favorite app and tell me why it's your favorite app. Similar question. But my follow-up question is the CEO of that company calls you and says, hey, I heard you had a lot of good feedback on the forums. We have a sprint with some space in it. Design for me the next great feature. Something that you want to build. And the reason I asked that specific question is because one, it helps me understand, do they understand the customer and the needs of the business? Like that's straight out of the gate. Because then, oftentimes, especially with engineers, they'll just start talking about some feature like, okay, but why is that a good thing? Like, why would you do that, right? But sometimes you get really great answers. Like, well, okay, what are they trying to accomplish? What's important to the bit? And they start out, and you see how their brains work. And so I would give that to you as a freebie add-on to that question for the next time someone interviews with you.
I love it. I know Google does a lot of that, where it's hypothetical, and you really kind of have to think through things in a different way, and you have to think on your feet, and that's really important for a product manager because you're going to be in situations, particularly at Amazon, where you're in doc reviews, and man, you better be able to to kind of move if the bullets start flying a different way, right?
Start getting twitchy on those docker views. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.